So lately I've been like asking questions or looking at what the questions our sages asked about the portion, and then finding their answers, and then kind of adding my own. So Bechukotai, it's a throat twister, not a tongue twister. It's in your throat there. Bechukotai, if in my statutes you will walk. The first verse there, Rashi says, Rashi has some questions. He said, first of all, why statutes? Why does this pasuk talk about the statutes and not the other mitzvot like edut, the testimonies, or the mishpatim, the civil laws? But it's specifically talking about the Chukkim, right? The Chukkim, the statutes. And so why is it singling out the statutes, right? The Chukkim. And then the second question is, why does it say telechu, you will walk, and not tilmedu, you will study? So it's not y'all will walk, but y'all will study. I mean, it's saying y'all will walk, not y'all will study, right? So why is it talking about that? Why walking instead, and also why only the Chukkim? So his answer, or what he came up with, is the word Bechukotai is related to the word hakikha, which means engrave. So he connected it with engrave and saying that these type of laws, you study them so much that they become engraved, they become part of you. He said, when you write something down, it can be wiped away or washed away, and there could, it could be kind of ruined in a way easily. But when you engrave it into stone or into metal, it's pretty much part of the metal, part of the stone, and it doesn't get removed unless you remove part of that stone, right? It's there until the stone is removed. And so he's saying that it's the Chukkim, they need to be engraved into you, and so you need to study them diligently. And he said, because you're saying walking instead of studying while we walk in them, is because it's like what More Ezra was saying. You continue to grow, you continue to walk, you continue to move on. You're never stagnant. You're never just sitting there not doing anything, but you're moving. You're all your life you are continually studying Torah, continually studying the Chukkim, these laws that don't really, in a sense, they're not rational, right? Shabbat, it's not necessarily rational. I mean, there's a lot of positives in it, right? You can take that break, take that time off, but some things are not completely rational. It's only with Hashem that you understand these things. The food, the kosher laws, these kind of laws. These are only through Hashem that we learn these things, right? Then they continue on. Then it says, and then I will give your rains in their time, your rains in their time. And why does it say your rains? So, if we're walking in Hashem's statutes, He will provide your rain and not like just rain, right? And so get gishmechem, your rains, rather than just geshem, right? And this is a little fun story I thought kind of interesting. So it says in the Midrash, Vaikra Rabbah, it tells us this story about Alexander the Great, right? So Alexander the Great, he visited a province in Africa. I like to think it was Ethiopia because the Torah is there in Ethiopia, right? So the people came out to greet him with golden apples and golden pomegranates and golden bread. And he asked, what's the meaning of this? Do they eat gold in your country? And they replied, is it not so in your country? And then he said to them, it is not your possessions I have come to see, but your laws. So as they were sitting, two men came before the king of the country for judgment. And one said, Your Majesty, I brought a carob tree from this man, and in scooping it out, I found a treasure therein. So I said to him, take your treasure, for I bought the carob tree, not the treasure. And the other argued, just as you are afraid of risking punishment for robbery, so am I. When I completed the sale, I sold you the carob tree and all that is therein. And the king called to one of them aside and said to him, you have a son? He said, yes. He called to the other and asked him, you have a daughter? He said, yes. And then he said, well, go, said the king, and let them get married to one another, and thus they can both enjoy the treasure that they found, right? And so Alexander was surprised. He was like, why are you surprised? The king asked. Have I not judged well? And he said, yes, he assured him. If this case had arisen in your country, what would you have done? And Alexander replied, we would have removed this man's head and that one's head, and the treasure would have gone to the king. And he inquired of Alexander, does the sun shine in your country? He said, yes. And does rain fall in your country? He said, yes. He said, perhaps there are small cattle in your country. He said, yes. And he said to Alexander, oh, woe to you. It is because of the merit of the small cattle that the sun shines upon you and the rain falls upon you. For the sake of the small cattle, you are saved. As it is written, O man, an animal do you rescue, O God. And the king's message to Alexander was that when the inhabitants of a country conduct themselves improperly, they are devoid of merit to be helped by Hashem. Their animals, however, did nothing wrong and deserve Hashem's attention. Thus, the inhabitants are helped through the merit of their animals. So the whole, I guess, idea is like your rain, Hashem is going to give you your rain because you are actually doing His mitzvot and you are actually worthy of that rain, as opposed to, Alexander the Great, who was not really worthy of the rain, yet, he still got rain, right? Because of the animals. So I thought that was an interesting story. And I mean, I guess it says it goes on in Africa, but I guess Israel's pretty close to Africa, so it could have been Israel. Right? Maybe at that time when the Midrash was written, Israel was part of Africa. Interesting. Okay, let's continue. There's one more thing. The next verse, it talks about, and you will eat your bread to satiety, or to fullness, you will be full. So if you're studying deeply the Chukkim of Hashem, then you will you will receive your rains, because you're worthy of these rains because of your study and your walk with Hashem, right? And then Hashem will also give you food and blessings, bread, essentially, your food to your fullness, right? So in the Gemara, it teaches us that these rains, so you get these rains at the proper time, right? It says you get your rains at their proper time, and so they like to compare it to the servant who gets his pay early in the week. His pay early in the week, so he has all week to prepare for Shabbat and enjoy the Shabbat, and it will be full, right? It'll be a full, joyful, peaceful Shabbat. And then if the rains do not come in the proper time, so in that sense, he gets the full experience of Shabbat because the rains are coming at the proper time, right? And at the end, so that the servant that doesn't study the Chukkim, essentially, that he gets his pay towards the end of the week, almost right before Shabbat, Friday, right? He gets his pay right before Shabbat, and he doesn't have time to prepare for Shabbat, to buy the food and to make the Shabbat as great as it can be, right? And so he's rushed, and so he doesn't get the fullness of Shabbat. He's not satiated during Shabbat because he's like rushed and everything. So I guess the idea is by studying the Chukkim, let's just say we'll pick Shabbat because that's the example. By studying the Shabbat, you are already wanting to keep the Shabbat the right way, right? And so you might be studying it. So early in the week, you are already preparing for Shabbat. So by the time Shabbat comes, it becomes more full. You enjoy even more than if you were not studying don't know much about it, and then all of a sudden it comes and it hits you. You're going to keep it, but you don't really have to keep it. You don't really know how to keep it, and so you're not getting the full blessing of Shabbat. So that's the one thing. So it's all kind of tied together, right? To study Hashem, you're going to get your rains at your right time so that you can actually keep the Shabbat even better than you could if you didn't study. So it's like a circular thing. I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, so my challenge is, because of that first verse that we learned, to walk in the Chukkim, to study the Chukkim. So I challenge you this week to, just pick one Chukkim, or even a part of it, the whole thing, just a little part of any of the Chukkim, and study that this week and see like what you can learn, how you can walk it better. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.